Non c'è molto da dire dopo quello che abbiamo visto, no? So it's a pleasure, it's a big honor for me as an artist, as a musician, to present this Ischia Legend Award to the legend of the music, Mr. Clive Davis.
Well, thank you so much for the wonderful welcome. Signori, signori, grazie tutti per venire. And since I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, the rest of my speech will be in English. I'm really here justifiably taking this festival very seriously. And the combination that you have with music and with film. I mean, the evening itself is a total wow, as Bolton said. This is a wow setting on a wow island, celebrating two loves of my life, and that's music and film. You can't do better than that. So first let me say that I personally discovered this part of the world about 20 years ago, and I've been coming back at least once every year ever since. It's home to me with its wonders of nature, the wonders of not only your food or your people, but the warmth and the friendship, indeed the essence of life that nurtures the soul. I see the sights, I breathe the air, I see the people, I'm alive, stimulated, but calm and at peace. Italy is my home away from home, and that's not just for tonight's event. This is my and I truly celebrate your glorious past, your present, and I know what will be a wonderful future. So tonight, celebrating film and music, even though the hour is late, you're going to permit me briefly, having come this distance, to reminisce a little bit of how, apart from what you might have seen on the screen, of how I've tried really to combine film and music meaningfully. When I was head of Columbia Records at the beginning of my career with Springsteen and Joplin and Aerosmith and those that you've seen, there were two of my artists that were involved in a motion picture that I knew would be acclaimed. But I was firmly told that since they were only involved with 3 or 4 songs, that there would not be enough music for a soundtrack album. But thank God I went to an advanced screening of this film, and I asked myself, well, what about the score of the film? Wouldn't that hold up around those songs? And what songs they were. So I did, and I went right ahead to prepare that soundtrack album. And the artist was Simon and Garfunkel. The film was The Graduate. And need I say more than the soundtrack album sold millions around the world. So fast forward to the end of 1974, and I had just started this brand new label, Arista Records. And you know, when you start a label from scratch, you want very badly for it to become an instant major. After all, I had headed Columbia for about 8 or 9 years. And how better to show that we were in the major leagues than to score a major soundtrack album. And Columbia Pictures was the sole investor. They were my partner in Arista Records. And because of that, I did have a claim to Funny Lady, Barbra Streisand's long-awaited sequel to the star-making Funny Girl that launched her career. But I would only get that soundtrack album because Barbara was under contract to Columbia Records, no relation to Columbia Pictures, if Streisand insisted. And for the first time, and the only time in her history, I had worked with her for many years. I had worked with her especially closely on that Stony End album. And very lucky for me, she remembered, she was loyal to the core, and we got Funny Lady. And it became our first top 10 soundtrack album and the second gold album in our short history. When it came to soundtracks, I was very selective. I was very selective about what we were to release on Arista. Two that stood out as among the most memorable soundtrack albums of the era were John Williams' majestic score from Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and the final Bernard Herrmann score from Martin Scorsese's urban masterpiece, Taxi Driver. And then there were the songs that we found to launch films, to make them aware, the hit song or the hit theme that might come from a film. There was Barry Manilow was ready to take a chance again from the movie Foul Play. There was Melissa Manchester's hit Through the Eyes of Love that propelled the film Ice Castles. Then there was Carly Simon's great contribution, Let the River Run, to the Mike Nichols hit film Working Girl, where she won the Academy Award for the Best Original Song. And of course, Ray Parker's Ghostbuster that served that film so well. But being involved with music and film, and I emphasize and underscore this on a night like tonight, is often more than just a hit single or a theme. There was a relatively small film directed by the late Herb Ross called Boys on the Side that had a strong female sensibility. And so I decided, go with it. Go with the essence of the film. Find music to underscore that. And we put together an all-woman, all-star album that would create a listening experience that genuinely enhanced the movie. This wasn't about breaking a single from a film. It was about an album that could be played from start to finish. And who were the cast? Well, Annie Lennox, Bonnie Raitt, Stevie Nicks, Sarah McLachlan, Sheryl Crow, The Pretenders, Melissa Etheridge, Joan Armatrading, and the Indigo Girls. All combined, it made for a wonderful multi-platinum album that frankly did more business than the film itself. And so, as I go back in time, it naturally does bring me to the Whitney Houston movies and her soundtracks. And naturally, the memory of them, the memory of her, is still a very raw emotional experience for me. How well I remember seeing that first rough cut of The Bodyguard. And I wrote a letter, which is actually in the Grammy Museum as part of my exhibit. It was a letter that I wrote to Mick Jackson, the director, and to Kevin Costner, and saying how off the mark I thought the rough cut was. I know that I was the head of a record company, but I had sat on the board of CBS when they established its film company. I was on the board of Columbia Pictures. I knew film, I studied film, a reader daily, a Variety, the Hollywood Reporter, and I said it had to relate. There's no music in your film. There's so little opportunity for Whitney to do her thing. No one would ever know why she needed a bodyguard in the first place. And it was Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner who took this to heart. He split from his director, took over the film. Very few people know that, but that's the truth of how it happened. And it was Kevin and David Foster and myself who added the great songs and performances that have made this film an all-timer and the most successful soundtrack album in history. And as a last example, there was Waiting to Exhale. And when I first saw that film, it had a Thames score that included Johnny Mathis's love theme from Romeo and Juliet, a Stephen Bishop song, a James Taylor song, all quality songs, but none capturing the essence and the soul of the film. And that's what we're talking about this evening in combining music with film. So I suggested we bring in my partner, Babyface, and he came in, and did he ever capture the film's essence with Whitney's great Shoop Shoop song, and Brandy Sitting in My Room, and Mary J. Blige's Not Gonna Cry, all three #1 songs, and added to it Defining Cuts by Aretha Franklin and Chaka Khan. So another all-time soundtrack album was created that integrated with the film itself to create a unique body of work. So what I've reminisced with you about tonight is how beautifully music and film can be integrated to everyone's advantage. I really deeply thank you for your giving me this opportunity to not only relive a little of the past, but to suggest for tonight a valid blueprint for the future where special new works of art can touch us and make us feel fulfilled to our core. So thank you for this absolutely wonderful evening and this wonderful award. All of that plus this magical setting and this entire experience will be etched in my memory forever and will never be forgotten. Grazie mille.
Signore e signori, Clive Davis!